Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. We have a lot of news from all over the place. The crypto carnage absolutely continues with two more companies going bankrupt. Largest volcano in the world in Hawaii is starting to spew again in the last 40 years, first time in the last 40 years. And we also have protests in China, which are affecting the global economy. In addition to that, regulation coming for the crypto space in Colombia and also Brazil. Sadly, the United States World Cup team is now down 2-0 against the Netherlands. For those of you guys that follow the World Cup, mostly the Spanish guys, right? It's not really American sport. Overall for the week, we had I don't want to say a major situation, but a significant situation in China where they started to protest against the quarantines. If you guys don't remember, China has a zero COVID policy. So if they have one case, they literally shut down everything. There was an apartment complex where they literally welded together the doors, and there were people that died in a fire because they couldn't get out because the government literally welded the door shut. Horrible, horrible situation. But this is the worst protest that they've had since the 80s in China. And obviously, it's a really bad situation because it's the second largest economy in the world. And now you have a combination of the protests and also the quarantines. And it's even affecting the iPhone production as well. The production for the iPhone could go down by 6 million units. They could be 6 million short for what they need to actually produce. Outside of that, the markets in the US, mostly positive. Canada was positive as well. European markets were mostly mixed, with Istanbul being the most positive. In Latin America, the Merval in Argentina was the most positive at 3.64%. The Bovespa in Brazil, big gain as well, almost 3. And then in the Middle East and also Africa, markets mostly mixed, with Egypt going up over 6%. And then in the far East, just like last week, we have the Hang Seng in Hong Kong going up over 6% more than all the rest. Bitcoin and crypto news. This is where I think a lot of the important news kind of comes out this week, because we have a huge contagion of the FTX collapse. If you guys don't know what's going on, the FTX is the second largest crypto exchange in the world, not including, for example, the US exchange, which is also one of the largest in the world. So because of that, we have another company called BlockFi, which is a company that was, let's call it, it's a rather large company. You're able to stake your crypto. And what that means, for those of you guys that aren't in the crypto space, you can literally borrow your crypto to somebody, lend it out, and then they pay you interest. Just kind of the simplified way of looking at it. They are citing the FTX collapse, as FTX was the second biggest creditor. They have over 100,000 creditors, and they literally have anywhere between $1 to $10 billion in liabilities, with a few hundred million in assets. Fidelity, which is one of the largest brokerages in the United States, is now opening retail and crypto trading accounts. Great timing, guys. And Musk takeover. Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson, he is saying that the new Twitter takeover by Musk can bring possibly up to 200 million more users to the crypto space. Another crypto exchange as well, Bitfront, which is a US exchange that's backed by a Japanese social media firm called Line Corp. The Line is kind of like WhatsApp over in China. They suspended new signups and credit card payments as of November 28th, and they're suspending withdrawals until March 31st. And there's another US crypto exchange called Genesis, which is seeking to avoid bankruptcy by trying to reorganize their institution. So you can see that this is continuing to kind of, the dominoes are starting to continue to fall, but don't forget, big crypto is the future. This is what I always told you guys. It's not that you can't make money with crypto. It's not that it's not going to make new record highs, right? I don't doubt that it might go back up to 100,000. But you have to be really careful, because obviously we have the situation that due to the lack of the regulation, there's a lot of, let's call it, funny things that happen, right? Very similar, for example, to the Forex markets and the binary option markets as well. Brazilian lawmakers, in addition to Colombia, have approved, let's call it, a package or a backbone for a regulatory framework for crypto. In Brazil, it's literally approved, even though crypto or Bitcoin is not considered legal tender. Obviously, they're socialists there. They want to tax everything. And then in Colombia, it passed the House of Representatives, and now they're creating a new a registry for crypto exchanges to be able to register in Colombia. It's all about that regulation and taxes in these socialist paradises. Bitcoin higher for the week. It's up over 2.40%, $16,577. In commodities, Ghana, the country in Africa, is wanting to be paid for their oil exports in gold and not dollars. This is continuing to be kind of the stakes of the collapse of the dollar, because less and less people want to receive the dollars that are deflating at a very rapid pace. We have a situation right now where the dollar is strengthening, or has strengthened this year significantly against all major currencies, but the dollar is kind of like the least dirty shirt in the closet. It's like the cleanest shirt in the dirty closet. So even though they're receiving dollars now, if they receive gold, supposedly gold is supposed to counteract the effect of inflation, because gold doesn't lose value. It goes up over time, kind of like a house. Mega drought in California farmland is costing up to $1.7 billion. Remember, we started talking to you guys about the food shortages, which is now becoming mainstream in 2020. The irrigated farmland in California shrank by 304 hectares, or nearly 10%. And I don't know if you guys can actually fathom the crisis that's coming, because California is literally one of the largest producers of food in the world, especially for the US. And the United States, remember, was the largest exporter of food in the world. Netherlands, which is the second largest exporter of food in the world, the government is closing down farms because of the quote unquote environmental impact. So there's a situation now where there's going to be a huge crisis coming, where eventually you're just not going to be able to find food. And I've talked to some of you guys, and I see it in the comments, where you go to the grocery store and just things aren't really the same anymore, right? In the United States, it's one of the things I kind of always missed about being back there, where you just walk into a supermarket and you literally have everything of every flavor, of every brand available all the time, 24/7. And now that's not the case anymore, right? California is going through the worst 3-year dry period on record. Well, on record, I should say, since we've been in the United States, right? Netherlands also is preparing their citizens for a national disaster. I need to create like a conspiracy Marcello section, right? To put all the conspiracies that never come about. If you guys remember, there were other countries as well in Europe that were talking about this, or trying to prepare their citizens as well. Even now, they're starting to admit in Spain and Germany and the UK, they're going to start having blackouts in the coldest months of the winter. And essentially what they're going to try to do is explain to their citizens, starting on December 1st, how to manage without gas, water, or electricity for 72 hours. Years ago, during the wars and 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, and 40s, there was always this culture of saving things to make sure there was an emergency. We've had peace for a very long time, decades, right? And so now we've kind of become accustomed to when that's never going to happen in our generation. So now I think it's interesting and unusual that a government now would start advising the public on that. And this is why I think all of you guys should start preparing. Because remember, the preppers were right. The oil tumbled to its lowest level in December of 2021 on Monday due to the protests and the quarantines in China. Remember that China is the second largest economy in the world, one of the biggest exporters in the world, and they literally make everything, including the babies. Biden administration is granting a Chevron a license to resume the oil production in Venezuela after they put in the sanctions 3 years ago. Remember, it's not okay to drill on U.S. oil. It's better to negotiate with dictators and tyrants overseas. China's coal production is set to rise for the 6th consecutive year to a record 4.4 billion tons. So while they're telling you to stop driving your car and all the elites are flying their private jets to Davos, and China continues to increase its carbon footprint, just remember, you got to eat bugs because you can't drive because it's too much on the environment. U.S. crude went up over 4% to almost $80. Brent went up over 2% to almost 86. And we had a huge drop in the value of the dollar this week, which influenced the gold and silver. If you guys remember, silver miners, for me, the silver market is beautiful. Great volatility, good opportunities to make money. Remember, educational purposes only. I'm not telling you guys what to do. You guys got to do your own research. But precious metals were a lot higher. Gold hit a 3.5-month high, while silver hit a 6-month high. Gold went up over 2% to 1798, while silver went up 7.70% to 2320. Silver, the reason why I believe it's a great market is because we have a shortage of silver, record demand, and also we're starting to have an ever increasing demand with things like the solar panels, with things like the electric car batteries. All this stuff requires silver. And if you didn't know, silver is the highest metal, has the highest metal conductivity of any other metal, meaning silver is the best to use with electricity instead of copper, for example. Financial and banking news, the bond market on Monday. In the United States, the spread of the 2-year and the 10-year hit its widest inversion since the mid-1980s. Remember that the inversion is the interest on the debt for the United States. So we have short-term debt and long-term debt. So when the interest on the short-term debt goes up and the interest on the long-term debt goes down, it creates an inversion. And that inversion generally indicates that a recession is coming. And so now we have the widest inversion since the mid-1980s, which means trouble is coming. First budget of the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is due for approved by her cabinet. Total of 30 million euros. There's a 4.5% GDP deficit. They're going to include a tax on deliveries to help shopkeepers, and also try to get $3 billion for windfall tax on energy profits. So and this is literally a version of socialism. The government is deciding who they want to win and who not to win. And obviously, when there's big government, there's never any corruption. They never choose their friends and give each other tax breaks and everything, right? This is why it's always better to have smaller government. And that's why the U.S. has become one of the largest and the biggest empire in the history of the world, because the United States started that way, right? We weren't going and invading other countries for their oil a few hundred years ago, but unfortunately things are changing. Political news, Biden signed legislation on Friday to block a U.S. railroad strike that could have detrimented the economy to the tune of $2 billion a day. In economic news, Cyber Monday sales hit a record for consumers at $11.3 billion. That's a 5.1% increase over last year. And this is where I like to kind of connect the dots, right? Because it sounds great. Oh, people spend a lot more money, 5% more. It's great, right? Well, think about it in terms of what the value of the dollar or the devaluation of the currency. The spending increased by 5.1%. The actual inflation rate that the government is reporting is about 8%, right? If the government was calculating the inflation at the same numbers and the same calculation as they had in the 1980s, for example, the actual inflation rate would be closer to 20%, 16, 17, 18. So the spending of consumers went up 5%. The actual inflation rate is about 17, 18%. And if you go to the grocery store, for example, your costs have gone up 20, 30%. So I would, we could probably say an average of about 20, 25. So even though consumers spent 5% more this year on Black Friday, the value of their money has gone down by 20%, 20, 25%. So they spent more, but what they got is a lot less. So they're literally spending more for less. Does that make sense? So in reality, if it was inflation adjusted, they would have actually spent less than last year, because obviously consumers are hurting right now due to the fact that inflation is nailing them hard. Demand in the UK residential properties dropped by nearly half following the September government budget. Buyer demand fell by 44% in 4 weeks leading up to the November 20th, and new property sales declined by over 28%, so they're getting hit hard as well. According to a CoreLogic index, the U.S. housing market pulled back even more in September, with prices slipping 1.2% from a month earlier. Third consecutive decline for prices in 20 large U.S. cities. And remember, if the consumer spending in the United States is almost 70% of the economy, the construction and the real estate markets is about 17, 18% or so. So you can see we're starting to see those red flags in the economy. U.S. economy did grow 2.9% in an annual rate for the third semester. That's July to September. Remember that in the first part of the year, the first quarter and the second quarter, we actually had, technically, we were in a recession for a brief moment. The India posted also their economic numbers. They grew 6.9% from in the quarter three on an annualized basis, which means that India now is set to overtake Japan and Germany to become the third largest economy in the world by 2030. So right now it's the US, China, Japan, Germany, and then, if I'm not mistaken, India, then the UK, and it would actually be the US, China, India, then Japan and Germany. So changing of the times. Corporate news, as I mentioned, the manufacturing hub for China in Zhengzhou is likely going to have an output shortfall of 6 million iPhones due to the protests and the quarantines. Billionaire CEO, Tesla, and Twitter, Elon Musk, talked about this fiasco where Twitter was supposedly supposed to, there's rumors that they were taking him off the App Store. He went to the Apple headquarters, they kind of ironed that out. And now the EU Commission, Terry Breton, is telling Musk that he's got to ditch the arbitrary approach to reinstate banned users and pursue disinformation aggressively. He also released the situation where there was a collusion between the government and also Twitter, where supposedly it interfered in the election during the presidential elections last go around. And Walt Disney is going to make operational changes and incur impairment charges due to the changes that the new CEO is making. He said that it's unfortunate that they had a little run-in with the Florida government, because now the Florida government, since they didn't like what Disney was doing, because it was supposedly going against what Florida wants to do in their state, they they removed their special privilege, and now they have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in extra taxes because they no longer have those benefits. Trade news, Russia sent India a list of 500 products for potential delivery. They want to try to make an agreement there, even though India is towing on a very sensitive line due to the situation with the sanctions. And German exports, remember, Germany, if I'm not mistaken, is the third largest exporter in the world, fourth largest economy. Their exports fell by 2 times the expected amount. So you can see how we still have those flags in the economy coming about. In technology, a submarine communications cable between Singapore and France was cut. If you guys remember, I think about 5 weeks ago, I mentioned another one. This is going to continue to happen. So hopefully everybody will have the Starlink internet service from Elon Musk. And alien minerals were found in a 15-ton meteorite that crashed in Africa that do not appear on Earth. And if you guys haven't seen the Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix from Graham Hancock, it talks about potential previous civilizations. It's very, very good. Just look up Graham Hancock and it should come up for you. UK Rolls-Royce successfully ran an aircraft engine with hydrogen in the first time ever in the world. They want to be able to swift away from carbon and fossil fuels, but remember, China's just going to continue to increase them. Baidu, which is the largest search engine in China, kind of like the Google of China, they have the world's largest fully driverless ride-hailing service area in 2023 with the testing and everything that they have done. And 3 Chinese astronauts arrived in China Space Station for the first time that anyone outside of the International Space Station that was led by NASA. So they're going to be launching missions there. And obviously China is, well, what's the best way to phrase it? Competing now against the US on the world superpower stage. Experimental Alzheimer's drug from SI and Biogen showed a slowed cognitive decline in a trial, but there may be some serious side effects for other patients that actually take the drug. And Kanye West rebanned again after he unfortunately posted some very bad things. He posted a swastika with the Jewish Star of David. So the not only has been banned again from Twitter, Elon Musk said that he tried to help him. Unfortunately, he didn't follow the rules. And Parler, which is a Twitter competitor, has terminated their deal to have Kanye West buy the platform. And a zombie virus, which is reanimated after 50,000 years in the Siberian permafrost, has been copied by scientists. It's like they're doing it on purpose, right? Here comes with conspiracy Marcello. Why would they take a virus and replicate it and put it in a lab? It's not like we had like a pandemic that came from a lab recently, huh? Researchers were able to document 13 never seen before viruses that were lying dormant in the ice and even reinfected even though they've been dormant. In investment news, Eurasia Economic Union is developing a payment system to rival the West, and they're also trying to add the BRICS into the mix. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They have dedicated payment systems in Russia and China and India, and what they're trying to do is create a system that's going to rival, for example, Visa and MasterCard. And international events this week, Shanghai officials put up barriers on Monday again with that zero COVID policy. There was a 2-day summit in Bucharest, Romania, where NATO is vowing to make Ukraine a member. 14 years ago in the same city, a foreign minister pledged for Ukraine to eventually join the union. Not like there was a war started in Ukraine for that same reason, right? Just poking the bear. And President Putin said he's open to talks on a possible settlement with the conflict in Ukraine. And unusual facts this week, as I mentioned, the largest active volcano by volume bursted into activity again for the first time in 40 years. Largest eruptive pause in recorded history. And the former leader of the Communist China Party has died at year 96. And that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm going to go back to watching the World Cup. Unfortunately, the U.S. is losing 2-0. So now we'll be rooting for Brazil. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.